Meeting will come to order. Are we got the thumbs up from the tech team for the folks who are following online? We ask that you will please stand if you are willing and able for the invocation delivered by Pastor Jeff Isaacs, as well as the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Pastor, for being here.
Thank you. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for being a good God. We thank you for today, the rain just reminding us that you take care of your earth. And so, Father, we thank you for just all the goodness that you give to us. Lord, love, life, and Father, even government. We thank you for the opportunity that the mayor and the city council have to govern this great community. Father, we pray that you would give wisdom to these servants of the community, these men and women, Father, that you would just fill them with your wisdom today as they address situations, even in the midst of crisis and chaos and a world that we haven't seen before. Father, just impart wisdom. We pray for unity in this community, Father. We pray for our law enforcement. We pray that you would help our community just get behind law enforcement around the nation as well. Father, we thank you for our public servants like those who are here right now. And we pray that you'd be glorified in this meeting today. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Madam Clerk.
Approval of the minutes of the special meeting dated July 3rd, 2020, and the regular council meeting minutes of July 14th, 2020.
Has every member had a chance to review the minutes? All right, is there any discussion on the minutes, proposed amendments to the minutes? See none. With that, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 11.
Has every member had a chance to review the consent agenda items 1 through 11? Is there any discussion of the consent agenda items 1 through 11? If there is no discussion, then I'll make a motion that we accept consent agenda items 1 through 11.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. If there is no discussion on said motion, the clerk will open a roll. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Report of awarded bids and contracts dated July 20th, 2020.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Hannah Lane, Department of Finance, here to present the July 20th Board of Bid recommendations. First engineering bid we have is O.J. Watson Event Center. Recommendation is to reject all bids. Casabella Second Edition Phase 7. Recommendation is Kansas Paving for $208,675.70. Paving Chirac Cider Bluff to serve Pike Edition Phase 2. Recommendation is Kansas Paving for $512,958.05. Water Distribution System Northgate 3rd Edition Phase 1. Recommendation is Nowak Construction for $56,877. Park Walking Path Repair Program East, PPJ Construction for $61,137.50. Park Walking Path Repair Program Sunset Park, PPJ Construction for $27,909. OP3 CIP Concrete Street Repairs Phase 1, Kansas Paving for $570,000. 2020 Sanitary Sewer Reconstruction Phase 2, Apex Excavation for $98,972.96. 2020 OP3 CIP Street Repairs Phase 4, Kansas Paving for $363,070. 2020 Sidewalk Maintenance Phase 2, PPJ Construction for $475,000. Grove Street School Crossing, Phillips Southern Electric for $57,500. Sanitary Sewer Relocation, Lot 10, Apex Excavation for $25,976.51. Cheney Pump Station Storage Building, recommendation is Bauer & Sons Construction for the base bid and add alternate number 4 for a total of $196,100. $31,000 GVWR Cabin Chassis, Altech Industries for the base bid of $190,715. Cell phones for the police department, it's a redirect to Apple Incorporated for $334,600. This is the purchasing procurement website, as well as our open request for proposals that we currently have out. With that, we recommend approving the bid awards, and with that, I'll stay for any questions.
Other questions of staff? See none. Any questions from the public? See none. Discussion will come back to the bench. If there is no further discussion, I will make a motion to accept the staff's recommendation to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded by Vice Mayor. There is no discussion on the motion. Clerk will open the rolls. Members will cast their vote. The result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
2020 City Facilities Improvements, Park and Recreation, Library, and Neighborhood City Hall.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, Chris Sewell, Public Works. That is, looks like we're waiting a second here. Someone in the tech office is working on it. There we go. All right. So this money is part of the annual allotment for what we call the General Facilities CIP. In past years, that's what it was labeled as in the CIP document. And if you remember from the February workshop where we presented the facility condition assessment and decision support tool, this $750,000 makes up roughly half of the amount of money that's needed to maintain our current asset value over the next 40 years. The projects listed here are some examples of what will be done with that money in a risk-optimized based approach, where the majority of the work will be focused on electrical and fire and life safety systems. These have a high consequence of failure if we don't plan ahead and get them replaced fairly soon. McDonald and Tex Consulver, those electrical systems, as well as Hyde McAdams Park, had fire life safety systems as well that were listed as in critical condition during the condition assessment. That's why they're listed here. And with that, I would recommend that the 2020 CIP be initiated, and I'll stand for any questions.
Is there questions of staff? Is there discussion on the item? Is there discussion from the public? Discussion will come back to the bench. There is no further discussion on the item, then I will make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the project, adopt the bonding resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open a roll. Members will cast their vote. All members will cast their vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Revised total coliform rule, designated water sampling stations.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of Wichita City Council. For the record, I'm Don Henry with Public Works and Utilities. The item before you this morning involves the installation of a sampling network for the total coliform rule for the city's water distribution system. There we go. So the Safe Drinking Water Act sets the standard for monitoring for bacteria and the effectiveness of the disinfectant that's in the distribution system. The original rule was put in place in 2016 for the current requirements. A KDHE audit was carried out in 2018, and at that time, KDHE identified that the city needed to make improvements in the monitoring network, and the new rule will require that the city be divided into 180 sectors as required by EPA, and one station in each sector will be installed, and then an additional 20 stations will be added to provide for effective monitoring for our wholesale customers. Our current approach became problematic because we enter private businesses like convenience stores, restaurants, also schools, and especially as modern faucets have leaned more towards a single handle mixing valve type faucet, that makes sampling problematic because the rule requires that the sample come from a standalone cold faucet, and the mixing valve and the single handle faucet, as they age, they can allow the hot water to bleed across, and that does not provide a representative sample of the network because the hot water tank conditions can give false positives and also lower chlorine residuals. And so other municipalities have adopted a similar approach that we're taking here, which will be a standalone sampling station in each of the 180 sectors. The photo that you see in front of you is similar to what the city will be installing. Now, note here, this location shows the sampling station adjacent to a home. We've taken much care to emphasize the location of our sampling stations to make sure that while they provide adequate representation of the network, we also want to be sensitive to the aesthetics and not be intrusive on private property owners. So we've taken care to work with KDHE to make sure that the locations are adequate, but also to make sure that they are in city right-of-ways away from homes and structures. And so the rule could require as many as 900 stations. And in 2016, when the rule came out, staff put in the CIP as a placeholder to cover as many as 900 stations. But we've been working with KDHE very closely over the past few years to narrow this down and take the time to make sure that we met the two objectives of the representative sampling as well as the aesthetics for this project. And so KDHE's been a great partner, and we've been able to limit it to one station per sector. We'll have an SOP in place for quick replacement. If we find that a station's damaged and we can't pull a sample, we'll have a inventory of spare spare appurtenances on hand so that we can do the quick change out. If you notice the photos in front of you here, the one on the right kind of shows the typical area where a station will be located. On the right-hand side, you see it's just kind of an open, grassy, green space area where we have a city right-of-way. It could be a utility right-of-way or stormwater. Same here, you see this drive through the neighborhood where we've got an open green space. This provides adequate access to the existing water line as well as access for the staff that will be carrying the sampling out so we can do a quick in and out. And so reducing the number of stations from 900 to 180 to meet the objectives has provided appreciable savings for this project. Funding in the amount of $3,205,000 for this project is included in the current approved CIP. The full cost of the project was accounted for in the most recent cost of service analysis and will not impact rates. And at this time, staff requests approval of $1.2 million in funds for the project design, construction, staff inspection, survey, and project oversight. And with that, I'll go ahead and provide staff's recommendations to City Council to approve the project, adopt the resolution, authorize the necessary signatures, and at this time I'll close the presentation and stand for any questions that you may have.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. So on the slides where you showed the city right away, and I think that was like an electrical box and a potential maybe gas line, would you be grouping these devices next to those or putting them separate from that?
We'll have to work through the utility locates to provide the you know, the optimum location is also gonna depend on where the water line is relative to those other utilities.
Okay, well, I was just thinking, I mean, these aren't 105-foot tall towers, but if we could keep them maybe together, it's less of an issue for neighborhoods. And if there's a neighborhood where there's like a stop sign or something else, I just think it probably would look better if they were grouped and not necessarily spread out.
We can certainly take that into consideration as we work through the contractor with the locates. And this will take quite a bit of staff oversight to pin down the precise locations. Right now, we've got the general area, and so that's a very good suggestion, and we'll definitely take that into consideration as we pinpoint the exact locations.
Okay, and my last question, I know you said you might be working with the adjacent property owners. Was there any way, I know neighborhood associations aren't meeting, but we could just give them a heads up, maybe an email or something, just, hey, we're gonna place this here, just so they know?
Right, absolutely. We've worked hand in hand with a couple of property owners where we had problems locating a favorable position, and used the input from those homeowners. One of them we met on site, and they actually walked around with us and found a place that was acceptable. The other property owner just pushed back, and so we found an acceptable alternative location. But as we get some more project definition, our plan is to work with the COM team and come up with what the right approach is for outreach.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. Don, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question, because I'm a little confused by the math. You said original funding was 3.2. This is 1.2 million. So where's the 2 million going? Is it saving for this project later to add additional, or what am I missing here?
Well, we do have contingency for the project, and we believe 1.2 million will be adequate. The 3.2 that was originally put in was a placeholder, because at that time we did not know, you know, what would be required, or the number of stations, or what the cost per station would be. And so project savings from this will be rolled back into the fund.
Back into the CIP for water and sewer, or?
The water and sewer fund.
Okay. And so this 1.2 is just for the 20 additional stations, or is it for the total 200?
This is for the total 200.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Are there questions from the public? See none, discussion will come back to the bench. If there is no further discussion, I will make the motion to take staff's recommended action to approve the project, adopt all resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the vice mayor. If there's no discussion on the motion, members will cast their vote. The result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Supplemental Agreement Number 1 with ITERIS funding for 2019 Intelligent Transportation Systems and Change Order Adjustment Limit.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for funding for Intelligent Transportation System improvements, particularly in the Central Business District area. To give you a little bit of history on this project, back in 2016, the City Council first approved contracts with ITERIS and Trans-Systems for consultant services to evaluate traffic signals both in the Central Business District and selected arterial corridors. The Central Business District is generally defined as from the Ark River to I-135, from Kellogg to Murdoch, and it's approximately 100 signalized intersections, and I'll show you a map of that here in just a moment. Since that time, we've had multiple things going on with this program, working with KDOT funding that was available through the Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. We had a project on K-15 that included some City of Wichita signals, working on optimizing that corridor, helped us learn and understand what we needed to do going forward, especially as we started focusing on the downtown area. We also had a pilot project that we worked closely with our IT department on Maple, from Mays Road to McLean. We were able to learn a lot from that I'll talk about more in a moment. And then also downtown fiber optic project, where we got almost $1 million, again, I mentioned through WAMPO, to start placing communication cable that I'll talk about more here in just a minute. All of this has really helped inform where we are today. So I wanted to talk real quickly about the fiber optic communication project. which is going to kind of get us off to a head start here with what we're doing in the downtown area. Along with Maple, the focus of this project, if you see what's highlighted in red, was initially for KDOT to provide a redundant loop for their communication system for their ITS signs, their dynamic message signs that are on the highway systems, and also for emergency operations communication back to the traffic management center. This project is currently under construction. You probably saw some work out here in front of City Hall at one point in time. This will provide a start to communication backbone for our traffic signals, particularly in the downtown area. We will eventually be able to tie more than 20 of our signals to this fiber optic communication cable for reliable long-term communication, even better than wireless. This fiber optic cable that you see and all the facilities that go with it will be extended to the stadium and also the new multimodal transit facility once it's built. The more we can communicate with the signals and they with each other, the more efficient the system's going to be. So this is a really good thing for us. City of Wichita was able to provide the local match and gain a pretty significant benefit from this. This was just a quick picture of the work being done near the traffic management center. And I mentioned again that we've worked closely with our IT department throughout this to make sure long-term operations with our server, with our communications, everything that we do are in place. So then looking at the central business district itself, each one of these red dots is a signalized intersection. I talked before about the Maple Street corridor. It's been successful in reducing primary corridor travel times by more than 3 minutes, as well as eliminating stops for eastbound traffic in the morning and westbound traffic in the evening. With the positive results we had from that, as well as the K-15 project, and now having the fiber optic almost operational, we are ready to apply the same proven improvements to other corridors, again, focused initially on the central business district. Staff has identified Douglas Avenue, which is highlighted here in red, from McLean to Hydraulic as the next corridor for proposed signal optimizations. This project spans 1.5 miles and includes 13 traffic signals. Improvements would include, which is the same thing we had done on Maple as well as K-15, is traffic signal controller upgrades, pedestrian push buttons, remote communication, and vehicle detection as needed. This will ultimately provide safer and more efficient travel for vehicles and pedestrians. We've got a lot of work going on, obviously, in the core area, a lot of new development, so we're making sure to coordinate that with anything that happens there, things that are changing. It's a pretty dynamic process, but we should be able to adapt with what we're putting into place to any changes that come after the fact. Some signals in the downtown area were put in at a time that were not actually warranted, and we've talked previously about the criticality of making sure a traffic signal is warranted, because a non-warranted signal can actually cause more problems than not. There are a few signals that we're going to look at with this project to see if they might actually be removed. We can gain some benefits by doing that, going back to stock control based on current operations and traffic patterns. One more quick thing too, you'll see to the left is highlighted in blue is the Waco corridor from Douglas to Central. We recently made improvements. We went from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. We added pedestrian push buttons to make that a safer travel corridor for bicyclists and pedestrians. We did not have the funding at that time to provide vehicle detection or communication facilities, so we're going to try to include that with the project at this time. We had originally thought at one time that we could kind of blanket this whole central business district with one facet at a time, if you will, that we could go through and upgrade certain parts all across the area. We came to figure out that by doing that, we effectively see no results for quite some time, so it made sense to start looking at this as a corridor at a time, and I think that we're going to be able to see a lot more effective results a lot quicker. Supplemental design agreement number 1 before you today will design the proposed signal upgrades, provide plan documents for bidding, and perform signal warrant analysis on the ones that I talked about within the central business district. We do plan to be under construction by the end of this year. So at this time also, as we've done typically on capital projects, we would ask for an increase in the change order limit to 10% for staff authority. The original contract with Iteris was just over $400,000. Adding the supplemental agreement of $96,000 brings their total contract to just under $500,000. The existing budget is $1,500,000. The CIP at this time includes $750,000 combined for ITS improvements, bringing the total budget to $2,250,000. With that, staff recommends the council approve the budget, the supplemental design agreement, adopt the resolution, the change order modification resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions on the item? See none. Any comments or questions from the public? See none. Discussion will come back to the bench. If there's no further discussion on the item, then I will make a motion to take staff's recommended action to approve the budget, approve the supplemental design agreement, adopt the resolution and the change order modification resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the vice mayor. If there's no discussion on the motion, clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Sean
Good
Henry,
morning.
Director of Finance. The item before you this morning is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019. The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report we commonly refer to as the CAFR. It includes the audited financial statements of the city, and we are required to file it with numerous agencies, including the state, federal grant agencies, the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board, and that's required in connection with the issuance of our bonds and bond covenants, and that required audit disclosure. The CAFR is also used by rating agencies to evaluate our creditworthiness. It's used by bondholders that are interested in the city's credit or bonds, citizens, and other interested parties. A few highlights of the CAFR. The introductory section is the first tab in the book, and that includes the transmittal letter as well as an organization chart. The second tab includes the auditor's opinion and what's referred to as the management discussion and analysis, and that provides detailed information about the financial position of the city and its funds, as well as detailed analysis. Following that are the detailed financial statements, and that begins on page A15 and also includes the notes to the financial statements, and following are individual fund statements throughout the book. The statistical section is near the end of the CAFR and includes detailed trend information such as financial, revenue, debt capacity, and other demographic and trend information. That's on pages G2 through G34. The CAFR is required to be audited each year by a certified public accounting firm. Our audit is conducted by Allen Gibbs & Hulick. We refer to them as AGH, and they are the city's external audit firm. We're also required to have communication of results of the audit by AGH. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mike Lowry, and he is the Senior Vice President of Assurance Services with Allen Gibbs & Hulick, and he'll communicate the audit results to you.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Mike Lowry with Allen Gibbs & Hulick. We were engaged to audit the comprehensive annual financial report and the single audit in accordance with the uniform guidance for the fiscal year ending 2019. Before I get started, I always like to give a big thank you to Sean and her staff and Nikki. You know, the audit is a huge undertaking, and they do that in addition to their normal daily duties. And this year was even a little more precarious with doing a lot of the audit remotely, and I will say that it went very smoothly, and we always appreciate that and their assistance in the preparation of the audit. The audit standards require that we communicate certain matters related to the audit to the governing body. We do that with two forms of communication. We send you a planning letter, and then we send you another letter that discusses the results of the audit. And I always like to remind the governing body that this required communications is a reminder that while we work with management to complete the audit, we work for the governing body. That being said, I won't cover the letter in detail, but I will cover some highlights of the letter. The standards do require that we let the governing body know if the city implemented any new accounting standards in the current year. The city adopted what we call GASB 83 and GASB 84, so two new accounting standards. GASB is short for Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and that is the accounting standards that governmental entities follow. GASB 83 related to asset retirement obligations. So this is similar to, if you think about the landfill and the post-closure requirements that the city has to maintain those. So as you know, the city has a liability out there that it records for the post-closure of the landfill. Well, the GASB looked at other assets and evaluated, do municipalities have other assets that when they retire them, is there some kind of retirement obligation that they might need to record? So that was really the crux of what GASB 83 was. The city implemented GASB 83, but when evaluating their current assets, they did not have any of those assets that fell under GASB 83, so no liability was recorded for anything, but they did need to go ahead and implement it, because just because they don't have, the city doesn't have those assets today doesn't mean they won't have those assets tomorrow. So GASB 83 had no impact. GASB 84 related to fiduciary funds. So the GASB wanted to clarify, the biggest impact really was in the agency area of fiduciary funds, and the GASB wanted to clarify what could be recorded in agency funds, because as they looked across the landscape, they realized that there was a lot of inconsistency between municipalities and how some of those things were being recorded. And so at a very high level, what it did is it just shifted some funds around. So, and I know we talked about a lot of this in detail in our prior meetings, but the city didn't lose any funds, it just shifted around some funds into different categories. Believe it or not all the numbers in the comprehensive annual financial report are hard and fast numbers. There are some significant estimates in those financial statements. For the city, this is the landfill closure and post-closure costs, the incurred but not reported liability related to general liability, workers' comp and health insurance, the environmental and pollution remediation, the net pension liability, the other post-employment benefits, and estimates for alternative investments, which are investments held by the pension funds. We did not have any audit adjustments to the trial balance that was presented to us to do our audit, and I don't want to gloss over that fact. When you have an audit, it's not very common that the auditors don't find an adjustment, so that really speaks to the quality of the finance staff and their skill sets and their hard work. We also had no financial statement findings, so no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that I need to report to the governing body. With that said, I always like to say that there are three goals to any audit. Did the city comply with all laws and regulations? Were internal controls in place, but more importantly, did they work? And does the comprehensive annual financial report accurately reflect the books and records? And I'm happy to report that the answer to all three of those questions is yes. Any questions before I move on to the single audit? All right. As a reminder, I'm not advancing this, am I? As a reminder, any non-federal entity that expends $750,000 or more in federal funds in any given year is required to have a single audit. Again, that's how much you spend, not how much you receive in a given year. And the city did receive approximately, or spend approximately $56 million in federal expenditures this year, or 2019. The city does qualify as what we call a low-risk auditee, and that being the case, the federal guidelines say that we must audit a minimum of 20% of the federal expenditures. In this case, that would be about $11.3 million. Based on our risk assessment process for all of the city's grant programs, we actually ended up auditing about $25.4 million spread across 3 different programs: the Housing Choice Voucher, or Section 8, Public and Indian Housing, and then the Airport Improvement Program. We did have 2 findings, one in the housing, or the Section 8, and then one in the Public and Indian Housing Program. These findings, I know we went over those in detail. While they were classified as significant deficiencies, they did not affect our opinion on the single audit. So the single audit did receive an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that you can receive during an audit. That being said, I don't think I mentioned on the city's comprehensive annual financial report audit, the city did receive an unmodified opinion on that as well. Again, the highest level of opinion that you can receive during an audit. With that, are there any questions?
Any questions at this point? See none?
Thank you.
Mayor and City Council, the recommended action at this time is to receive and file the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for this item? See none. With that, I will make a I'll make a motion to take staff's recommended action to receive and file the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2020. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. If there's no discussion on the motion, members will cast their vote. For the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Overestimate bid and grant award for tennis center improvements.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council.
Good morning.
Barry Hooper, Public Works Engineering. The item before you today is the overestimate bid and grant award for the Riverside Tennis Facility improvements. This aerial image here illustrates the extent and impact of this project. Currently, Riverside Tennis Center has 10 outdoor tennis courts. There are 3 indoor courts. With this project, we'll be extending the number of tennis courts from 10 to 13. A good number of these courts will be removed and replaced. Some of them will be resurfaced. In addition to the tennis court project, we will be including the addition of 6 new pickleball courts. If you look to the far west end of this site, we have 3 existing pickleball courts currently. This will bring our current number to 9 pickleball courts, which is a substantial difference and significant. In addition to these improvements, we will be including the construction of a tiered seating area that's between the tennis court facility that's currently there at courts 4 and 5 and the new pickleball courts, the 6 pickleball courts you see in the image. On June 19th, 2020, we did bid this project, and all the bids exceeded the engineer's estimate. However, as previously approved by the City Council, a request for additional funding was made at that time to the Maureen Conley Brinker Tennis Foundation of Kansas, Inc. The Mo Conley organization has been a very benevolent organization to the city of Wichita over the past 45 years. It is one of the longest remaining chapters in the foundation. They have collaborated with the USDA Net Generation, and they've provided numerous tennis camps and lessons over the years. And they have saved a portion of their funds in the last 42 years to expand the area's public tennis facilities. At this time, I'd like to just briefly stop for a moment. We have a special guest that's going to be joining us remotely from Century 2, and her name is Julie Ryan. She is the president of the Mo Conley Brinker Tennis Foundation. And so,
With that, the chair will recognize Century 2. You have the floor for your speakers. Good morning.
Since I'm remote, I was told I could take my mask off, so I hope you don't feel too jealous and mind me doing that. But thank you for the introduction, Larry. I appreciate it. Maureen Connolly Brinker Foundation of Kansas, and I'll refer to that as MCB going forward. We really want to thank the city and each of you because of your vision and your support for these improvements to the centrally located Riverside Tennis Center. You see, MCB, we share the belief that this project will improve the quality of life for our citizens and also bring revenue at the same time into our city. So MCB, being a 45-year organization now, it was founded by a group of ladies, a small group, that enjoyed the sport of tennis and wanted to extend that to our community kids. So they founded this organization with the goal to improve the quality of life for kids in our community that may not have that opportunity otherwise. And just as Maureen Connolly herself, her life was greatly enhanced because she had a volunteer tennis coach her through the years. She became, in 1953, the #1 tennis player in the world. And she was only 18 years old, so her career was very promising. Unfortunately, it was cut short as the next year she had a horseback accident, which ended her career. But she co-founded a Maureen Connolly Brinker Foundation in Dallas that remains today. And their purpose is to groom tennis players through the junior ranks. So they have Little Mo tennis tournaments, and we're looking forward to having those here in our Riverside facility moving forward once these improvements occur. But since that 45-year founding, there have been hundreds of volunteers, both either running the organization, helping with the fundraiser, or just supporting financially. So we have a real strong community. We are the only community that's focused on our community kids as an organization. We're the only sister organization of Maureen Connolly Brinker's family and founding organization in Dallas. So it's really an honor to have these volunteers. Volunteers like Mary Ellen Randall, she was a founding member, and she's also continues to be on the board. So she's our longest standing board member, and it's really a community success story to have these volunteers believe in our community and serve. But while our main focus is on the kids, last year we had about 1,000 kids go through our summer activity camp for kids and other funded programs that we have just for the kids. We also, as Larry alluded to, saved 10% of each annual fundraiser every year for over 40 years now, because we had a vision of bringing our Riverside Tennis Center up to its full potential, and also to be able to compare more favorably with our sister cities in our Missouri Valley Conference. So while we are volunteers to help our community kids, we also, many of us, play tennis, and as such, we're on a USTA team, and we find when we get the privilege to go to sectionals, we find ourselves traveling to Oklahoma City or Des Moines, St. Louis, Kansas City, even Topeka. And now we're really excited because of this expansion, we can actually host these USTA tournaments here in Wichita, which is in the heart of the Missouri Valley. So let's get those people off that I-35 corridor and stopping in Wichita, and we're really excited about that. So now is the right time. It's the perfect opportunity. It's been long awaited, as we know, and MCB is very honored to grant $403,000. And again, that represents many years and many hours of efforts with that longstanding dream of bringing Riverside tennis up to its potential. And I just really want to thank the city and each of your vision, because these improvements are going to bring a lot of positive things to our community in the future. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's exciting.
Thank you, Julie. So as Julie mentioned, this is a $403,000 grant award to the city of Wichita for these improvements. It will provide sufficient funding for the improvements that I shared with you earlier. Any remaining funds that come from this grant will be utilized for additional restroom improvements and other improvements as funding allows. Within your packet, there is an MOU that provides greater detail of the agreement. Back in June, this project exceeded the engineer's estimate by $214,000. However, with the acceptance of this MCB grant award, it will provide sufficient funding for the current project as well as future improvements. In summary, again, it's a $403,000 grant from the Mo Conley Brinker Tennis Foundation of Kansas. It will provide sufficient funding for this project. The previous approved project budget was for $1,500,000. With this grant, that brings the total to $1,903,000. With that, staff recommends that council accept the grant award, adopt the amended bonding resolution, approve acceptance of the lowest bid, and authorize the necessary signatures. And I just wanted to reiterate our gratitude on behalf of Troy Houtman, who couldn't be here today, the entire city, Parks and Recreation, Public Works staff. We're very thankful for this grant. And at this time, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions from the bench? If not, we're open up to questions from the public. My understanding is that there's at least one more person at Century 2 who would like to speak to this. Is that correct, Megan?
No, we don't have any other speakers here at Century 2.
Thank you. Discussion will come back to the bench if there's no public discussion. With that, given that this falls under District 6, the chair recognizes Vice Mayor Claycomb for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the Maureen Conley Brinker Tennis Foundation, because without this, we would not be able to complete this project as we had intended. So thanks, Larry, for your work on it. Thanks to the Park Department. So with that, I'd like to move that the City Council accept the grant award, approve the amended bonding resolution, approve acceptance of the lowest bid, and authorize the necessary signatures.
I will second the motion. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open the roll, members cast the vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Substantial amendment to 2019-2023 Consolidated Plan and 2020-2021 Second Program Year Annual Action Plan.
Well, good morning, Mayor and members of Council. Sally Stang with the Housing and Community Services Department for the record. The item I have for you today is a substantial amendment to the 2019-23 Consolidated Plan and our Annual Action Plan for 2020-2021. So the city receives an annual allocation of funds from HUD to fund activities that align with the city's goals of creating a livable and sustainable community. The funds are used to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and affordable housing. The 3 entitlement grants that we receive are Community Development Block Grant, which is very flexible funding used for a wide range of community development needs. And our award amount for this year is $2,933,865. The Home Investment Partnership Program, and it's used to create affordable housing units for low-income households, and with an award amount of $1,535,187. And the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is used to address homelessness in our community. We received $246,609. So in 2019, we completed our 5-year consolidated plan, an extensive activity. It took about 9 months to identify the community needs and spending priorities for these 3 entitlement grants. We also, each year, have to complete an annual action plan, which identifies the programs or activities that we're going to tackle, and the funding we're going to use to tackle them in that program year. So we have for you today the 2nd program year of our 5-year consolidated plan, and it's due to HUD on August 1st. They did grant an extension due to COVID-19. This is normally due to HUD May 16th, and it covers the period of July 1st through June 30th, 2021. So as part of the consolidated plan, we worked with the community and the council and identified high priority funding areas with particularly high levels of poverty and high minority concentrations, and this map just reflects those high priority funding areas and how they overlap with opportunity zones. So we also are proposing to amend the consolidated plan that we created last year for several reasons. First, we wanted to add new components related to economic development activities. And we found we needed to roll the rental housing rehabilitation RAD program forward from the previous 5-year consolidated plan because of the delays in that program. We actually had to move that activity into the current consolidated plan in order to draw the funds and report on that activity. We also wanted to provide additional flexibility to allocate home program funding for rental housing development that is leveraged with low-income housing tax credits to try and get higher leverage rates and more units with the funding that we receive. Also to allow funding programs related to infectious disease and disaster response. Obviously, under COVID-19, that became a high priority. And a plan and account for the ESG and CDBG CARES funding we received. CDBG has a requirement that any program funded must meet a national objective to benefit low to moderate income individuals or families, to prevent slum or blight, or to address urgent community need. There's actually 101 eligible uses for CDBG, and we do about 7. So it is very flexible, but at least 70% of what we spend must benefit low to moderate income persons. Again, the allocation for this next year is just under $3 million. And we're proposing to fund an MABCD for the demolition and clearance of properties, unsafe, structurally sound properties that are vacant, that are cited by MABCD staff. We're allocating an additional $100,000 for public facilities and infrastructure improvements in high priority funding areas. This is similar to the project we did earlier this year, which was the drainage improvement at Poplar and Green that supported Habitat for Humanity's Rock the Block program. Allocating $50,000 for the commercial facade improvement program, which was just recently designed and provides an alternative for small businesses that can't take advantage of the facade program through the Economic Development Office due to its placement on the property or other issues in the low mod areas. This one is new, Small Business Assistance Program. It's written to allocate some funding, and we've left it very flexible so that we could do assistance for for-profit businesses that serve low-mod people or that hire low-mod people. In the wake of COVID-19, we wanted to make sure we had this eligible activity in the plan so that we could be reactive in the community. We have our home repair program, which provides emergency and critical home repairs in households for homeowners that are lower moderate income. CDBG administration, the grant allows for 20% for program management and indirect costs. And then public services. In most communities are limited to 15% of their CDBG allocation for public services. City of Wichita was grandfathered and is allowed to spend up to $1,109,316 a year, and we do utilize every penny of that money for public services. Programs we cover are, we fund the Office of Community Services and the 3 neighborhood resource centers. Housing First coordination, so the Housing First program rent subsidies are paid with City and County General Fund, but the program coordinator is paid out of CDBG. Domestic Violence Shelter Services, Youth Crime Prevention and Enrichment, and the Summer Youth Employment Program. So as part of our citizen participation plan, the Grants Review Committee, which is made up of members assigned by all of you, they review the proposals. They meet several times and make funding recommendations related to CDBG, ESG, and home funds. And I want to thank them for their time. It is a daunting task to read through many proposals, sit in debate, and make those recommendations. We also conducted a public hearing regarding the proposals on February 13th. They made selection and funding recommendations, and they are as follows. For domestic violence shelter, they've recommended Catholic Charities Harbor House, $90,000, Stepstone Transitional Housing at $23,000, Wichita Family Crisis Center at $127,000, and the Raise My Head Foundation at $10,000 for a total of $250,000. For youth services, they've recommended the YMCA's middle school after-school program for $105,000, Kansas Big Brothers and Big Sisters for $33,000, and Real Men, Real Heroes for $12,000. We also continue to fund park and recreation youth activity in Plainview at $50,000 for a total of $200,000. Youth employment, the allocation of $200,000 out of this program year will actually be used in the summer of 2021. The Way to Work program is going on strong right now, and the funding for that program came from the 2019-2020 program year. Under the HOME program, the Community Housing Development Organization set-aside, HUD requires 15% of our home allocation go to certified community housing development organizations. And the Grants Review Committee recommended funding Mennonite Housing, $197,028 to construct 3 homes, and Power CDC, $72,117 to construct 1. Additional home funding, Chodo operating funds and that set aside come to a total of $319,145. The Home Ownership 80 program is a down payment assistance program. We're looking at $256,307. We have the Home Development Loan Program at $400,000, Program and Administration at $153,518, and the Wichita Housing Authority RAD project. We had divided their allocation over 3 years, so this year's allocation would be $406,217. For the Emergency Solutions Grant, HUD requires that the Continuum of Care make recommendations for funding. As part of our process, they reviewed proposals from community service providers for homeless services, and made recommendations to the Grants Review Committee. They participated in the public hearing of proposals on February 13th, 2020. They made their selections and funding recommendations, and the GRC actually concurred and recommended $17,163 to Harbor House Shelter Services, St. Anthony's Family Shelter, $23,846, Humankind Inn, $22,819, The Salvation Army, $13,567. United Methodist Open Door, $38,156, and the Wichita Family Crisis Center at $20,077, for a total of $135,628 in homeless assistance for shelter services. In addition to that, we fund 2 agencies to provide homeless prevention, to provide emergency rent payments for those facing eviction, and we funded Center of Hope, recommended Center of Hope at $25,000, and the Salvation Army at $13,146. Total ESG funding for this program year was $246,609, with $135,628 for homeless shelter assistance, homeless prevention $38,146, and rapid rehousing $53,029. We also fund the homeless management information system and program administration and indirect charges. No, it's a lot to cover, sorry. CARES Act. As a result of the passage of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, we have received additional CDBG and ESG allocations, and we have till the end of the program year of 2022 to expend those allocations. Under Community Development Block Grant, we received $1,725,897 to be used to prepare for and respond to COVID-19. And the Emergency Solutions Grant, we received 2 separate allocations totaling $3,301,120. For 2021 program year, we're recommending program administration and indirect costs of $146,333, increasing funding to the domestic violence shelters by $75,000, funding the hotspot program to expand connectivity to internet and broadband at the Office of Community Services, so a $50,000 allocation. Also funding the Neighborhood Resource Center's $30,000 to do outreach to low-income areas related to COVID and COVID resources. And then the continuation of the food box program of $40,000, which was approved previously. We still have remaining $480,778 for other public service activities that we can allocate in 2021. And we have many different programs we're evaluating right now for that, which we would bring to you separately in the future. For ESG, for 2021, program administration and indirect costs of $160,311. The homeless caseworker program at $209,361. Homeless service activities, this is a general bucket for additional homeless service activities of $424,044. Additional rapid rehousing for those who've just entered homelessness of $319,360, and additional homeless prevention for those facing eviction of $319,360. Under financial considerations, the home program does have a requirement for 25% local match. We meet that through permit waivers and additional grants and loans, down payment assistance provided through local financial institutions and CHODOs, and other funding or reduced charges offered by CHODOs and other organizations receiving subsidy. And under ESG, for our normal allocation, not the CARES Act funding, we're required to provide 100% local match. So for every dollar they give us, we have to provide match, and we do that through the City County Housing First program, where we're funding rent assistance for the chronically homeless. So all CARES Act funding is exempt of match requirements. There is no additional impact to the general fund. And the development of the consolidated plan and annual action plan are required for the receipt of those federal funds. So at this point, it's recommended that the City Council close the public hearing, approve the funding allocations and recommendations, authorize the submission of the substantial amendment to the 2019-2023 consolidated plan and the 2020-2021 annual action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, authorize the funding agreements and necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions.
Questions for staff. Chair recognizes Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, and not really questions. The fact that you're breathless reading it all demonstrates the incredible amount of work that this encompasses. And I just again, not a question, but I just want to take a moment to give you some praise and then also your team some praise for an incredible amount of work. And thank you all to the Grant Review Committee. Really, if you can express our sincere appreciation for their time and dedication to making sure that these funds are allocated in the most appropriate way. I've said this consistently for 20 years. It's harder to give money away than to get money. And so I know that this took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of thoughtful consideration. I know personally some of the benefits of these programs. I've been involved with the YMCA's middle school after school program and saw the impact that it had. I'm very interested and excited about Raise My Head, the youth employment project that we've worked on. So again, just thank you for this work and the impact that it's going to have in the community for not just this year, but for generations to come. So thank you, Sally.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Sally, I also want to echo what Councilmember Tuttle said. Thank you for your hard work on this. I'm happy to see small business funding in the facade program. So I always ask the question, how are we getting the word out? But you highlighted a few things that gave me some ideas. So we have $480,000 remaining. And I would like to see, especially since you talked about low-income areas and hiring folks who don't make a lot, if we could share that information directly with the Wichita Hispanic Chamber, the Heartland Black Chamber of Wichita, as well as those over at Founders Grove. Founders Grove and the Create Campaign have a business list of more than 100 folks. And if there's a way we could share that directly or work with them to get a mailing list and maybe send a postcard, nothing, really expensive, but just these are our opportunities that we have right now for funding. I think that could help get the word out. And then, I don't know if this is controversial, but since we have that Home 80 program, I know we do a great job of getting the funds out, but if there's a way to maybe mail that information to renters in Wichita. I don't know if we have a documented list of renters, but there are folks who could be homeowners, help create that generational wealth opportunity for them to buy and own a home, and they may not know about this. So if there's a way to do that. And then my last idea, I haven't talked to anybody about this, but while you were speaking, I know that we all, well, not all of us, but most of our districts have houses that are blights on the community and probably should be torn down for safety reasons. And each one of those demolitions, I think, is around $8,000 to $10,000. So $100,000 really gets us about 10 or 11 houses. Is there a way to start a dialogue maybe with your chodos, maybe even the private sector on sharing that cost? And because ultimately when we tear it down, the city takes that property. And I know we want to see that property developed and not sit as an empty lot. We've got over 200 in District 1. So if there is a way the private sector or Chodo could come in at half that cost, we pay half, they pay half, then they would be able to develop on that lot. We could work out an agreement where they would own it at that point. It would stretch our dollars a lot longer. Don't know if that's legal or not, just came to my mind, wanted to share it. So I think that's all I have.
Other Councilmember Clendenin.
Thanks. I'm going to have to echo what everybody said, and thanks to everything that I know that you and your staff have done. Some of these programs are extremely important. I've seen it firsthand over the last 8 years. I'm very happy and impressed with the efficiency in which you're having the office run right now, so it's great to see. Just some thanks. I'm happy to see some like the Hotspot program and some of those going to the Office of Community Services from the additional money from CARES Act. I think that's extremely important. So thank you for those programs that you distributed them to. They're going to be extremely effective. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? See none. We did have one over at Century 2, but they just texted me and said that they're very happy with your presentation. So you no longer need to comment, which is great. Any further comments from the public? See none. Discussion will come back to the bench. I will go ahead and make a motion to take staff's recommended action. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. If there's no discussion on the motion, clerk will open a roll. Members will cast the votes. The result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
2021 annual operating budget and 2021-2030 capital improvement program.
Mayor, members of council, Bob Layton, city manager.
Welcome. Don't forget to introduce yourself so that we know.
Just did, thank you. Before I get started on a very serious presentation regarding our financial position, I thought maybe we should just take a second to celebrate. We don't seem to do enough of that with our 150th birthday today. And hopefully we have created a city that honors the legacy of our founders, and that they would be pleased if they saw where we are today, even with the financial conditions that we're facing.
Amen.
This presentation is probably anticlimactic based on the amount of work that you've put into the budget so far this year. We've had the most robust process for the preparation of the budget since I've been here and probably in my entire career. I'm going to talk just a few minutes about our financial environment, why this is a serious challenge for all of us, talk about how we worked through the budget this year and develop the recommendations, and then I will cover some of the large or most significant recommendations of this budget. I also will talk about the capital improvement program. As you know, COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the city as well as the entire community. And what is happening in the community plays out with our budget. As all our businesses and our residents are struggling through this time, that's reflected in our revenues and reflected in the way that we're doing business. And you'll see that throughout my recommendations and discussion of the budget. Very familiar to you when you started the budget process, when we went through the initial overview, we had an $11.5 million deficit for this year. About a $17 million deficit projected for 2021, and about a $21.6 million deficit for 2022. I'm sorry, that should be 2022. A reminder of some of the factors that contributed to our deficit position: significant reduction in our sales tax receipts, obviously a drop in our investment earnings, also reductions in our gas tax receipts from the state, and in fines and penalties, especially as we shut down our municipal court system for several months. Fortunately, as we started into the budget process, we had some great background work that had been done by the council over the last few years. And the discussions that you had regarding zero-based budgeting and the identification of activities that were untouchable and those that were touchable as we move forward, we were doing that actually to prepare ourselves for streamlining operations, but also in case of a recession that we thought would be coming in 21, maybe possibly 22. So you had already done some heavy lifting moving into the budget. It's just that it hit us quickly and with a lot more severity than we originally anticipated. We spent a significant amount of time working with our department directors as we worked through preparing options for your consideration, and had, I think, pretty robust input from our residents as we were trying to come down to some of the final recommendations for this budget. And of course, you had 3 retreats, which I think, hate to use the term unprecedented, but I don't think we have been that deep into a budget before. Your April 7th workshop or retreat was to let you know what we were seeing in terms of our revenues. At that point already, we were seeing or projecting significant deficits for 2020. We went through some preliminary options and talked about refined revenue outlooks on April 21st, and then on May 26th, you actually rolled up your sleeves and went through, I believe, 90 budget options and gave us guidance on how to move forward as we were preparing the recommended budget. Throughout the discussions, not only did we look at the work that you did with zero-based budgeting, but we also looked at our mission statement and at our values and wanted to make sure that we prepared a budget that was in alignment with the mission statement, which we believe reflects not just our own thoughts about what's important, but more importantly, what our residents believe is important for the way we do business and deliver services. After the council, or if you remember on May 26th, when you went through all of the budget options, we broke them down into tiers. And As we got to the end of that process, you indicated there were a number of options that you wanted to test with the public before we were to go forward with putting final recommendations together. And so we took that through a two-tiered engagement process. The first had to do with, well, actually it's 3 tiers, right? We went to the district advisory boards, we used the budget simulator, and we also continued to use the social media town hall. The budget simulator was very successful this year in the fact that we had over 3,000 people balance their budget, or at least attempt to balance the budget by giving us an indication of their priorities and what they wanted to spend money on and what they thought we should cut back in order to get the budget balanced. You'll see that fire and medical responses, some work in police department and investigations, as well as pavement maintenance were the highest scoring items, or the items that were least cut when people were trying to balance their budget in the simulator. Social media town hall, again, was very successful. Almost 10,000 people participated in social media town hall this year across 3 different platforms. And we found very strong support, once again, for street maintenance, also for maintaining library hours, and also maintaining levels of service for park mowing. So let's jump into the budget recommendations that came out of all of the work that you have put into it to this point, as well as the feedback from the public. Our total budget is almost $630 million. Charges for services is our main revenue source, with property tax following that. And that's the chart on the left. On the right shows how we will be expending those funds. If you remember, this includes all of our normal operations, which we put in the general fund, as well as our enterprise funds, which is the biggest difference between this and the general fund is it includes the utilities. Salaries and benefits are the most significant expense in the total budget, followed by debt service. If we get down to the general fund, which the public really identifies as our operating budget, this year would be, for the 2021, it would be $247 million. We would generate about 38% of our revenue to support that budget from property tax, franchise fees, and sales tax are the next 2 largest revenue sources. In terms of expenditures, if you look at what most of our residents would identify as our top priorities, police, fire, and public works, that's almost 75% of our total expenses in the general fund. On the right-hand side, you'll also note that about 76% of our total expenditures in the general fund go for salaries and benefits. So that's just a reminder of why it's so difficult to balance a budget when you have an $11.5 million deficit in one year, a $17 million deficit in the next, when so much of what you do is in 3 service areas that are considered high priorities, and also that so much of what we spend goes to salaries. In spite of all of that, one of the things that I understood to be important is that there would be no mill levy increase for 2021. It seemed to me, given the difficult financial conditions that we were experiencing, but more importantly our businesses and residents were experiencing, this was not the time to be talking about an increase in our mill levy. So we had to be creative and had to work hard in order to get this budget balanced without that new revenue source. And it is balanced for 2021 as well as for the revised 2020 year. There has been some confusion, and that's one of the reasons why I put the 3rd bullet point on here, regarding the police budget for 2021, and there's been some folks have asked questions, actually for 2020 as well as 21. People have asked questions about what they perceive to be a significant increase in police. Actually, what it does, it's a reflection of the council's commitment to funding the police staffing study and making sure that we have sufficient staffing levels in the department. Last year that showed originally in non-departmental expenses. Those expenses now have been moved over to the police department budget. So it looks like a significant increase, but it's actually one that had been approved by the council previously. It's almost more of an accounting transaction than anything else. As we discussed during the retreats, we had to take some pretty quick actions in order to be able to balance 2020, and that started with a hiring freeze, at least a targeted hiring freeze in March. We are projecting that will continue throughout the remainder of the year and into 21. We looked at, again, these are some issues that you talked about during the retreat and that we also received feedback from the public on. We looked at cutting back on our, cutting back on our tree planting in order to protect tree removal. We cut by 5% our arts and cultural services funding, and then kept that flat for 21 and 22. We're looking at privatizing Century 2 operations in 2021 to also make us, not just in terms of changing our business practices, but also to help us build a sustainable model going forward using best practices from the industry. We are changing the focus of our animal shelter to make it more of an internal use, and that we will continue to keep our staffing for our field operations, continue to emphasize that part of our work, and the shelter then will take the animals from that field work and will continue to house them there and also make them available for adoption. But we will not take animals going forward from the public. We're also looking at substantial savings from our lower fuel costs, as well as energy efficiency measures that we've instituted. And we're looking at a couple of targeted restructured efforts in the library. Our mill levy, as I indicated, will be flat during this budget period, 2021 and 22. We are moving a half mil from the debt service fund to the general fund in order to be able to help fund our operating expenses. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the CIP. Before I jump into the CIP, are there any questions on the operating budget and the recommendations that are before you today?
Councilmember Clendenin.
Yeah, well, before I pushed it, that's very good.
Saw you, corner of my eye. Very good.
Bob, real quick, I've had questions about the animal shelter and some concerns about that. If people call and have an animal that they want to turn into us, will we give them a list of rescues and other organizations that are available to take?
Right now, I'm not sure that the rescues are under state law, whether the rescues can actually accept those animals. We're going to work with them going forward to see if there's anything we can do to help facilitate that process so that they could be eligible. The Humane Society is the main agency that is able to receive those animals.
Oh, okay, so there is an outlet for people then. That's perfect. Thank you.
There's also a model that I'm having staff do research on. I think Salina is very good with this when it comes to utilizing our animal nonprofits and shelters to pretty much move animals around so they're more likely to be adopted, and that could hopefully, and I'll share the results of those studies, hopefully would offer these services with less taxpayer money involved.
Yeah, we'll continue to work with the rescues. It's a little bit complicated for them in terms of being certified to be able to actually serve as a shelter. But again, we'll work with them. We'll also work on using our website to advertise animals that are up for adoption, even if they're not in our facility. So again, we still have some work to do in this regard.
Excellent.
I will note that the model that we're following is similar to the model used in Overland Park and in Topeka. And that we're relying on their ordinances as we go forward with our recommendation.
Excellent. Other questions? I do have one about Century 2 operations, and I'm wondering that I believe will be the privatization of Century 2 operations. I believe will likely cause some anxiety and some questions from the public. Are what's the best way for the public to get information on that and also voice their concerns? Is it just through the council, or will there also be public forums or opportunities to do that?
Mayor, we have not outlined the final process, but we are putting a request for proposals together for the privatization. And I think given the nature of this operation and significance to us, we'll probably bring it to the council to endorse the RFP before we go out. And that would give the public then an opportunity to weigh in before we ask the private sector to submit proposals and before you consider proposals.
Very good. Other questions at this time? See none, you may continue on your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. So let's jump into the capital improvement program. We're to the point where we're almost at a $2 billion level for our 10-year program in improving our infrastructure. And that is a priority that has been stated by the council for over 10 years now, and that the need to do a better job of being stewards of the infrastructure that we have, as well as building the various improvements necessary to support growth and development in the community. If you look at the left-hand side, you'll notice that we have a number of revenue sources that feed the CIP, many of them significant in terms of utility revenues, what we receive from the local sales tax that we share with the county, as well as special assessments. Back in the day, we used to spend a lot of time talking about the general obligation bond portion of this, and that there's a misconception that so much of what we do is funded through general obligation bonds and the property tax. But if you look, it's really a small portion of our total revenue. On the right-hand side, again, reflective of the way that we receive our revenue, significant amount of improvements that go into those sewer and water utilities, as well as into our street system. COVID-19 obviously impacted this document as well. Sales tax, transient guest tax, and the property tax all will have impact. And as a result of that, and to provide some cushion to help with the operating budget and moving the $500,000 to the operating budget, we have recommended to you that we defer 18 projects that were in last year's CIP, amounting to a little over $28 million. And in most cases, we're talking about deferring those projects a 1 to 3 year period. This just simply talks about the guiding principles that we followed in preparing the CIP. One thing I do want to highlight from this slide is the community investments plan. You adopted that. Many people consider that a comprehensive plan, but it's really to help guide our public improvements and our infrastructure plans over a long planning period. Some of the things that you and I all hear about, and that is the condition of our streets, and we have been working hard to preserve the money, and in fact to try to increase the funds that are available for improving our street system. And if you remember, it wasn't that long ago that we were putting $4 million on an annual basis into contractual street maintenance. By the end of our planning period, which is 2030, we will be at $20 million a year. Councilmember Fry has talked about how it's starting to become noticeable, and we're starting to hear more citizens talk about the improvements to the streets. So hopefully we, as you saw in the simulator, as well as the social media town hall, this is still a top priority for the community and one that we're trying to preserve in our funding recommendations. In terms of public safety, over $100 million over the 10-year period would be spent for primarily upgrades or improvements to police stations and fire stations, existing stations, as well as about $36, almost $37 million for new fire apparatus during the 10-year period. We have $12 million we've been able to preserve for bike and pedestrian projects. Another $11 million reflects the council's adoption of the new public art ordinance, and then we have about $30 million reserved for downtown street projects. There are a number of benchmarks that the council adopted to help guide us with the issuance of debt and the preparation of the capital improvement program. The one that we talked the most about is our GO at-large debt as a percentage of our property tax revenues, and you'll see that even with the deferral of projects and this difficult financial position or condition that we're in, we're still able to keep at or below the benchmark level for this important indicator. Go back to the budget. As I mentioned, we have made significant changes and program modifications in order to get us balanced in 2020 and 2021. However, we still have a structural deficit for 2022 and beyond, and that's, again, you're not adopting the 2022 budget in August when you adopt the final document, but you are looking at projections, and that means that next year, if nothing else changes financially, we will still have some hard work in order to get us to a balanced budget in 2022 and beyond. But I do think it's safe to say that no one can predict where we're going to be 6 months from now, much less a year from now. A reminder of our budget process: today is your first public hearing on the operating budget. You'll have a second hearing scheduled for the 4th, and then you'll be asked to adopt the budget on August 11th so that we can meet the state statutory requirements for the adoption and filing of the budget. So what we're asking you to do is to set the public hearing date for the proposed budget of August 11th and approve first reading of a number of ordinances. This is maybe the most important part of today's process, and that is you're setting the maximum amount of taxes for the 2021 budget. A reminder, what that means is that when you adopt the final budget, you cannot go any higher in this amount. You can lower your tax requirements, but you're setting that maximum today. And then we're asking you to receive and file the proposed capital improvement program. Mayor, with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions related to CIP or any other issues that came up regarding the operating budget.
Other questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I think this is for everybody, but on August 11th, since this is a budget item and with COVID and everything, I would love to see that meeting in the evening. Just want to put that out there, just to get more engagement from people on a budget opportunity.
If the council decides to do that, you probably need to include that in your motion today so that we can have, I think we'll need that in order to make sure that we properly advertise the public hearing date and time.
Councilmember Claycomb.
I just want to make sure, Councilmember Johnson, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear it.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I was just saying on August 11th, since it would be the public hearing, if we had that meeting in the evening, I think that would allow more engagement so people could discuss this a little more.
Councilmember Bluebach.
Thank you. I'm curious what kind of engagement you're looking for, because the county just asked that we limit gatherings to 15 people.
So just online, folks tuning in, if they have comment, it would just give them a different opportunity. One of the criticisms that we get is that our meetings are at 9 o'clock and in the evening, and I just feel like in the evening you get better engagement. Folks may show up to Century 2. We might have different rooms for folks to give public comment if they stand outside in line, socially distanced, and want to come in, but just to provide that opportunity for folks to have greater engagement.
I feel like we're shutting everything down anyway, so it's not normal that people would be at work and stuff.
Mr. Manager, in the likeliness that we will see more action from the county when it comes to slowing the spread of the coronavirus, is it possible that if a substitute motion includes an evening meeting on August 11th, that we could have more sites for public engagement, perhaps a site in every district, perhaps just at least more rooms being utilized at Century 2? Is there a way we can accommodate more folks for public engagement utilizing the technology we currently have?
Mayor, I have two comments. One, we'll do everything we can to expand so that we can safely distance. I think Councilmember Bluebach brings up a good point, and that is if we're at 15, if that's what I'm hearing, then it'll take several sites to be open. And we'll look at our ability from a technology standpoint to support that. The other item I want to bring up is we've spent a lot of time modifying this budget process over the last 10 years to get away from that emphasis on the last budget hearing, because for all practical purposes, if someone gives you a comment on the 11th, it's really not practical to amend the budget at that time. I mean, you've gone through, in this case, you've been working on this since March. It seems to me if you're going to ask for meaningful public input, the best meeting was either today or the 4th, right? Because at least if there's comments on the 4th, it gives us a week to put something together. But that's one of the reasons why we have done the engagement process that we have, and we have so many more people involved through this process. I mean, almost 13,000 people have somehow participated in the process to this point. But again, it's up to you how you want to do it, but I do think the 11th would be difficult, especially the night of the 11th, to have people comment. I don't think you're going to have a lot of flexibility at that point.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I feel like I just won the intellectual lottery because I was thinking exactly what you were thinking, Mr. Layton, of I am absolutely for public engagement and want to seek as much as we can. And I was thrilled that 10,000 people participated in the budget simulator, considering it's only the second year we've done it and during these trying times when people have so many other things to focus on. But if people brought suggestions or questions or comments, it's the second reading, so we really couldn't do anything then. So I wonder if there's a way maybe to have another opportunity for community engagement between now and then, or as you mentioned, August 4th. So sorry to reiterate, but I was thinking the exact same thing of that's almost too late. So maybe some other options we can come up with to give more authentic community engagement now that it's been presented.
And again, I think because of the process that you followed to this date, there should not be any surprises for the community. I think the media has done a good job of covering the issues that you discussed during the retreat. And again, the public engagement, I think, put it out there. But if you want even more robust discussion in a public setting, I would just recommend considering the 4th.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I think everybody had good points on that. So maybe it's considering in 21, this meeting would be in the evening, just going forward to get more engagement. And I just really wanted to see that, just, folks being off work, they have an opportunity to see the meeting live rather than going back recorded and couldn't say anything to us. So I appreciate that. Maybe it's considering next year, this meeting going out. And then the last thing I wanted to say is just thank you, Bob, for all of this. We've been working really hard for some time, and I know that it sucks to look at the numbers right now and the cuts that we have to make, but I appreciate your work and engagement with the council and the community as well in putting this together. I know, again, that wasn't fun, but I appreciate that. And just another note, as I've seen some criticism on social media, your job is to present us a balanced budget, and it's not to give all of the wonderful ideas many people have. We have to do that in a balanced way, and you do that really well. And we all are both happy and probably unhappy with some things in the budget, but I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I think you do a great job at that.
Thank you. This is a great time to recognize Sean Henning and Elizabeth Goltry-Wadle, Mark Manning, Dante Martin, and all the others that have been involved from the finance staff especially, for their work on the documents. I'm not sure that some people in the budget office have seen their families for the last 3 months, so I do appreciate all of their support and work.
Councilmember Johnson, would you be opposed to an August 4th evening meeting? Or do you think that an August 4th evening meeting would achieve the goal that you're setting out to have?
Well, after discussion from my colleagues, it won't. I think what it will do is just give an evening opportunity for people to watch rather than going back to YouTube. I'm not opposed to that, but I was looking more at the engagement piece, which is probably going to be better next year.
Very good. Vice Mayor Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo some of Councilmember Johnson's comments. And, this is my third budget cycle now, and I think this is the one that I feel most prepared for, partly because it's my third budget cycle, but more so that we had the budget retreats where we were really involved. And I felt like really prepared this year to be able to, move forward. So I think in the future, even though I think this was forced upon us partly because of the circumstances, but in the future, I really would like this to continue. So I really appreciate staff's work. I know it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work to get us up to speed during those months beforehand, but I think it pays off in the end. So thanks, Bob, and thanks to staff for all of their work.
I appreciate the feedback through the process. I think we've got some amendments for next year. We're going to follow this general format. The Councilmember Fry talked to me about maybe changing the timing of the DABs so they can have more meaningful input, so we'll do that. And then Councilmember Johnson's suggestion for a night meeting for the unveiling of the budget, I'll incorporate that into the schedule as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one more comment. Again, Bob, you keep stealing what I was going to say, so we're thinking a lot alike today. But thank you to the finance team, to Sean and Mark and Elizabeth for making it a process that's digestible. And we get 4 inches of paper. Sometimes it's hard to be able to put everything together, but because of the workshops, it's been very helpful. And then also, I just want to really thank all department staff and the department heads. I know that finance obviously is leading this great work, but during this time, we've seen a lot of sacrifice from our department heads and our departments, who not only are subject matter experts and some of the best in the nation in what they do, but also everybody really came together and thought of how we can make sure that we're providing the best quality of service to our residents and our customers, but also, not increasing fees, increasing taxes, anything. And that's just something that's really commendable for everybody to agree to work together and to sacrifice. And it makes their lives a little harder, but it's making the community a little better. So I really appreciate your leadership and your guidance all the way down to the departments and the department heads and their teams. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Mayor, if I can, I forgot, there's probably one big thank you that we have neglected, and that is our colleagues across the street, Sedgwick County. We have incurred over $6 million in additional expenses dealing with COVID-19, and the county commission and the county manager and his staff have been very receptive to using some of their CARES Act funding to help us offset those expenses. So this operating budget assumes that those costs will be covered through that CARES Act funding that will be eligible for with Sedgwick County. Again, that's the commission has not made that final allocation yet, but they have indicated that helping us and other communities, other cities in the county with those COVID-19 expenses is a high priority for them. So again, I just want to thank them for being such a great partner and recognizing our financial difficulty.
Councilmember Bubag.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you know what that dollar figure is that the county got from the CARES Act?
They received $99 million, and I believe they've allocated a little over $10 million of that for cities to help cover our immediate COVID-19 expenses.
Okay. Do we have any idea what they're projecting for the other $80 million?
Yes, actually, they have approved a framework for that, and they will be soliciting applications, I think, beginning this week for the formal submissions. But the commission, I think, approved the matrix or framework for that about a week ago.
Is it business or personal or both, a hybrid of both? Or?
I don't know. I'm probably not the right person to talk about it. I know there's money for testing, significant amount of money in that budget for testing. I can't remember some of the other categories.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion? Very good. So with that, this vote is just to set the public hearing on a proposed 2020 budget for those watching. With that, I will make a motion to take staff's recommended action. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. If there's no discussion on said motion, clerk will open a roll. Members will cast the vote. There's a vote of 7 yeas to 0 nays. The motion does pass. Chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. There is an off-agenda item I would like the council to consider. And could I give a motion for that?
Chair will second a motion to add a item to the agenda as printed if the maker of the motion would describe the item.
Okay. I would like to move that we take up an off-agenda item regarding a planning item from July 7th.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? See none. With no discussion, the clerk will open the roll as members cast the vote. This is just to add an item to the agenda. It's a 7 yeas to 0 nays. That motion does pass. A new item has been added to the agenda. The chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson for explanation of his new item.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to call Jennifer up to explain this.
The floor yields to Jennifer, who is our legal staff.
Good morning, Mayor.
council members. Jennifer Magana, City Attorney. This item is a motion to suspend the rules and allow the reconsideration of planning case CON 2020-00007. The recommended action today is to consider this motion to suspend a council rule of parliamentary procedure to allow for the reconsideration of this planning case. In the July 7th meeting of the council, the planning item was presented for consideration and voted on. However, the agenda report and the presentation to council at that time incorrectly stated that the District Advisory Board had denied the application by a vote of 10-1, when actually the DAB had approved the application by a vote of 8-2. Because this is a quasi-judicial process and these decisions are subject to the appeal of district court, staff is recommending that this item be returned to City Council for reconsideration on the August 4th planning non-consent agenda. The City Code allows a motion to reconsider only to be done during the same meeting. That has already happened, so we would need to just suspend the rule to allow for temporary suspension of the rule, which would allow for council's reconsideration with the correct information to be presented. This action requires a simple majority vote of council to approve the motion. There are no financial considerations to this request. The Law Department has reviewed and approved, and so it's recommended by staff that council move to suspend Council Rule 2.04.340E to allow for the reconsideration of the planning case on August 4th.
Is there any questions on the staff recommendation overview? With that, Chair recognizes Councilmember Clinton.
Can we just have a quick description of which planning
This
item that
planning
was?
item was changed to, in District 1, to allow a spot along 2nd Street to be changed to a parking lot for College Hill OBGYN. I believe it was a conditional use. So just to allow from what was along a residential area to change to a parking lot use for that business.
I remember now. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there any further discussion on the item? If not, Chair will defer to Councilmember Johnson for a motion.
Thanks, Mayor. I move that the council temporarily suspend its parliamentary rule 2.04.340E, motion to reconsider for the reconsideration of planning case CON 2020-00007 on August 4th, 2020, planning non-consent agenda.
Is there any discussion? Motion will be seconded. I will second the motion. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. With that, clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. With the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember comments and appointments.
Well, let's start off with appointments, if the council doesn't mind. I would like to move to appoint Chad McDaniel to the SSMID Advisory Board, and also move to reappoint Frank Rash, Lucas Parthmer, Phil Sewell, and Randy Holm to the Mechanical Board. Are there other appointments at this time? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to appoint Ruben Scheck to the District 1 Advisory Board as a youth member. I would like to appoint Shauna Stevens to the Transit Advisory Board. And I would like to appoint Janet Raddick to the CSBG committee.
Are there other appointments at this time? Seeing none, I will make a motion to accept said appointments. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. If there's no discussion on the motion, clerk will open the roll. Members cast the votes. With the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Is there comments of the body for the good of the body? Councilmember Clendenin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little bit of a personal note for me, and I think for a lot of people in the city, concerning wearing masks and some of the exemptions that we have here at the city of Wichita, also the county and the state. I've had several people get a hold of me this week, and this is just as a reminder to the public. We have a lot of people that do have legitimate exemptions for wearing masks, and I've witnessed once in a store some really harsh treatment of a young lady who didn't have a mask on. Many people, especially those people that have been victims of domestic violence, can't wear a mask. There's a very big block there for wearing a mask. One lady has a 5-year-old son, a little over 5.5 years old, who can't wear a mask because he has asthma, being treated like she's a bad parent. I mean, there's just stories keep coming in. I just want to remind the public, let's not victimize people that aren't wearing masks. They have reasons. Let's not re-victimize people of that have had issues with domestic violence. Let's treat each other kindly and with respect. And just wanted to kind of make that just quick reminder to everybody that we don't know what everybody's going through in their daily lives. So just wanted to put that out there for the public to digest a little bit. Thank you.
And I'll just comment that I believe our ordinance gives an exception for those who are 5 and under to not have to wear masks.
Yeah, he's 5.5. Regardless. Thank you.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. On this day in 1870, 124 people signed a petition incorporating Wichita as a city. Richard Robinson was the only black man to sign it, and Catherine McCarty was the only woman to sign it. 150 years later, our city is charting a difficult course as we navigate through COVID. I think together we're persevering, and we're showing the world why Wichita is an all-America city. So I just wanted to wish our city a happy birthday. Here's to the next 150, and let's be bold.
Other comments? With that, we will make a motion to move to executive session. So with that, I move that the City Council recess into executive session for 20 minutes to receive information on a statutory process application to municipalities pursuant to KSA 754319B2 for the legal consideration, for the legal consultation with the city attorney, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship for potential litigation and legal advice. 1 second. The executive session is required to protect the attorney-client privilege and the public interest. We will meet for 20 minutes at 11 o'clock. Is there a second?
Second.
Motions are made and seconded to go into executive session at 11 o'clock a.m. For 20 minutes. Members will cast the vote.
And Mr. Mayor, can we clarify that the meeting will resume in council chambers?
And then, of course, the meeting will resume in council chambers following the 20 minutes. With that, the motion does pass 7-0. We'll be in executive session in 5 minutes.